So your pet that's in your life it's all perfectly orchestrated for them to not only be with you energetically and to help you energetically, but their personalities too. It's completely chosen behind the scenes ahead of time.
Kathy, thank you so much for accepting my invitation to appear as a guest on my podcast. You're an animal communicator. You've been communicating with animals your entire life. Perhaps we can begin there. What is animal communication and what do you do as animal communicator?
Well, thank you so much, Oslam, for having me. I really appreciate that, and I'm so excited to talk about animal communication today. So, yeah, animal communication is really telepathic communication. That is basically sending messages telepathically through pictures and thoughts back and forth. And it not only happens between animals and humans or animals and animals, we do that as humans sometimes. We think, oh, someone calls us, our friend calls us up, and we say, wow, I was just thinking about you. It's the same sort of thing that's happening. But basically, animal communication is taking those thoughts and those pictures from animals and bringing them into you so that you can interpret them and understand them. And then we in turn can send those back to them. So it's something we're all born with. It's our birthright. And it's just that as we get older, we start to really use that other side of the brain more. And so it's our intuitive side of our brain, our creative part of our brain that works in that way and uses that telepathic communication. It's intuition is what it is. And basically, so we end up closing it off. Not everyone does, but we end up using a lot more of our left brain, our logical, analytical mind. And so it's kind of like a muscle, I like to tell people. And so it can atrophy. And we just need time. If we want to learn to communicate with animals, we just need some time and some practice to build that muscle back up again. And some trust and confidence too, because sometimes people don't trust what they get.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, what are typically the reasons for which people get in touch with you for you to help them better communicate with their furry soulmates?
Well, there's a lot of different reasons. It can be from anything from, is my dog happy? I'm not sure. Do they know that I love them? Are they okay? Are they in the right home? To behavioral issues, things like, wow, my cat is now peeing outside the litter box, and this has been going on for a while. What's going on? I went to the vet. We checked out. Everything's fine. There's no UTI. What's happening? To my dog is over anxious, and gets really nervous when I leave, or if we go out on walks and this my dog jumps on people. To is my animal ready to cross over? I don't know. I need some reassurance. I don't know. To my animal did cross over. I really want to connect with them. I miss them so much. So it's a whole range of of things. And sometimes it's, we're leaving for a month and my dog needs to stay with, our friend, and I really want them to know that and make sure that they're going to be okay. So all different reasons.
Yes, I can totally identify with that. When my Lily was still alive, whenever I was absent, and not for a month, just a couple of hours even, I'd feel separation anxiety. Like I didn't want her to feel abandoned. So knowing how to communicate with your animal's friend, soulmate, it can be very helpful, I think, in reducing that anxiety, at least that I experienced. I just really didn't want her to feel abandoned. So
Well, and to add to that, Aslam, what happens with our animals is they are, and we can talk about this later, but they are super absorbers. They'll transfer our energy over to theirs. And so often, if we have some anxiety about leaving them, it can magnify it. And
Oh,
so they take that on and then they project it out and they act out accordingly.
oh,
So they can show us they're wonderful mirrors that way so often. But if you're able to, like you said, be able to communicate with them, send them pictures, thoughts, and really let them know, I'll be back in a couple hours, everything's fine, you would see a dramatic difference.
oh,
And part of it is because we feel calmer.
yeah. I see. Oh, that's beautiful. Yes, yes. So, what is, I mean, the animals who we cross paths with, who come into our lives, it's not random. What role do animals play in our lives? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, Animals choose us, and we don't always realize that. We think, oh, we go and pick out a dog from a litter or a cat from the, humane society or shelter, and we think we're rescuing them, right? And you hear people say, well, I rescued them, but they rescued me, and in a way that's true. But they choose us. It's all orchestrated behind the scenes. Sometimes we don't choose to allow them to come into our lives. I've talked to a few animals where that's happened, but there's always a different plan. And animals are really good at accepting what is and what happens. So they feel a little sad, but they accept it. But yeah, they choose us, and they choose us so
Mm.
that they can take care of us.
No.
That's what people don't understand too, is that yes, we take care of them, we feed them, give them love, but they're actually taking care of us.
No.
They're helping us. They're one of the things that they do is they raise the frequency in our homes,
Mm.
um, with us, because they are, in a sense, I like to call them angels incognito. They have the soul of an angel, and that is why they can keep giving so much. And they raise that vibration by absorbing, like we just talked about. They can be those super absorbers where the energy gets transferred. And then they take it on or try to release it or in any way that they can. But they really help us in so many ways. And so your pet that's in your life it's all perfectly orchestrated for them to not only be with you energetically and to help you energetically, but their personalities too. It's completely chosen behind the scenes ahead of time so that we have a personality that sometimes can mirror us and sometimes be the opposite and really help inspire us. So it all works together.
Mm. Mm. Yes, you also, I mean, you offer sort of animal communication sessions, but you also coach people in animal communication. How can we begin to communicate with our animals better? Um, where or with what does it begin? Is it mindfulness? Is it presence? Or
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's all of those things. What I like to teach people is about connecting with their heart. So getting quiet, going within, taking some deep breaths, and then really starting to focus on your heart. And that's where I usually start. And our heart chakras are the color emerald green. And animals live in that energy of heart, and they love emerald green.
no,
So, what I have people do is start sending the emerald green energy, love energy from their hearts to their pets. And then just keep sending it, stay in that energy. Ask your animal, are you ready to talk? Are you open? They almost always will be because they want to talk with you.
yeah,
And then you start feeling that energy. It can be so subtle, but that's such a big thing. I tell people when you can start to feel that energy come back to you from your pet, you're connected. You're on their line. It's kind of like a telephone line. And
mm,
I call it an emerald green telephone line. And then we're connected, and then you can feel them. And then you start sending them what you'd love to send them. And you listen after, and you allow it to come in. And it does take some practice, like we talked about in the beginning, needs to get rebuilt up, but it also takes some trust. And so then it's about trusting what you feel. And part of what happens with that too is that when you're connected and you can feel that energy, that's when you know you can really trust what you're getting. If you can feel those messages, if you can feel their energy, it's so subtle, but you can feel it, you know that it's accurate. You know you're getting it.
Mm, 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 mm. I think perhaps also one of the many reasons people get in touch with you is perhaps when their pet is ill, and when um, our fur baby, our soulmate is sort of ill, we tend to, I mean, I remember with my Lily, I would try all sorts of therapies and modalities, but I think at some point I bothered her more than actually helping her. So, yeah, I think again that's a place where animal communication can really come in handy or be helpful. Just to know, okay, what does my pet really want from me here? How can I be there for my pet, but not impose myself on them in a way, or impose my own fears, or etc. Yeah.
Yeah, when we're dealing with illness or end of life kinds of things and trying to make those decisions, can really help to get their input on it because most animals don't want to suffer.
Mm,
That's something they don't want. And oftentimes, it's not all of the time, but oftentimes what can happen is their body is deteriorating. Maybe they're tired. It's a lot of work.
mm,
You know, it's a lot of what they're doing, and they're transforming all the time. They're supporting us, and sometimes they just need a little rest to leave. And then if we can let them go, I know it's so hard. It's hard for me even, and I'm an animal communicator. It's so hard to let them go, but when we can do that and allow them to leave, and we can trust that they're going to come back to us, because most often, if it's an animal you're very connected with, they're going to be coming back. They want to keep continuing to support you and help you. So just being able to communicate with them, and if we feel that message of that they're ready, really allowing them to leave. I mean, we could still feel sad and experience grief, but know that they're going to come back and they're going to be able to support us even better because they're in a new body, and they're in the young body again, and they can do everything that they want to do and help us in a way that's a much higher level than when they're deteriorating,
yeah.
physically.
Yeah, yeah. You say that animals help us tap into our intuition, but they can also provide us insights into problems that we're dealing with in our lives. Do they do that? Um,
They do. They do that in a lot of different ways. They, because they're the energy absorbers, the super absorbers, the sponges, they can absorb things, and it can manifest physically sometimes,
mm,
and it's for us to see. So if they're having some maybe issues with their heart or their lungs, maybe it's something that you need to look at with your heart. Maybe you've got some kind of a wound there or pain that you need to look at and release, because they're trying to help you, and then they're trying to help you by absorbing it, but they're trying to show you. So oftentimes something like that can happen. They can also, it can show up in behavioral things. We talked about the cat sometimes going outside the litter box and there's no UTI and there's no medical explanation for that. Well, as we know, cats are really, really sensitive to things. So maybe you have some kind of a upsetting situation happening. You've got people, this happens very often where we have people coming in doing construction, let's say in a home, and the cat suddenly starts going outside the litter box. Um, so we can say, oh, wow, yeah, my kitty's upset about that. But we can take it a step further. And my guess, because this has happened a lot with me and my experience with animals, if you take it a step further and you have a conversation with them, you might find out that actually you are being impacted by the construction, and it's really you, and they're mirroring back to you this is too loud. This is disruptive. I need my space back. So various things like that, simple things can happen. And then, of course, we can just talk to them. And so if you did a session with me, or if you learned how to communicate with animals, you can talk to them, and they actually have spiritual downloads that they can share. Oftentimes, it'll happen in a session with me where an animal will just start downloading information coming straight from spirit, but it's, through them,
Mhm.
about what this person needs to hear, about maybe what they're not quite hearing themselves for their heart or their soul. So they are incredible that way, incredible teachers.
Mhm. Yeah. What are, throughout the years that you've been doing animal communication, what are some of the common messages that animals communicate to you? And what were there any messages that really stood out to you in terms of the role that they play in their humans' lives or otherwise? Yeah.
Oh, there's so many. They're all so special in their own way, and so it's difficult to pinpoint. I can think of a recent session I did with a horse who who was trying to tell his human that she needed to really stand her ground. She was dealing with an attorney for some legal issues with her family. It was it was just, yeah, it was there were some issues going on with real estate and things like that. And she didn't tell me any of this. The horse said, and she said to me, "My goodness, my horse is acting up. He's acting the way that he normally doesn't act. He's not listening to me. He's 1,000 pounds, Kathy, and he's backing away, or he's leaning into me. And I love him dearly, but I'm a little frightened. What's happening? Is he upset with his food?" And so I connected, and I said, "No, he's picking up on what's happening, and he's asking you to listen and stay grounded in your heart so that you don't give in to these male egos that are around you that are trying to tell you to do something different, and you're not speaking up." And so he wants you to do that. So horses can be teach us a lot about our power, our own power. So that was really in line with his message, is saying, really, stay in your heart power, really
Mhm.
speak your truth about all that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, there's so many examples. There was a dog I communicated with the other day who she was so special, and she was having some health issues, and they didn't understand what was going on, and needed some help. They had been to the vet and they weren't quite sure, and um, I immediately connected with her, and she said, "Well, my humans have so much grief in their lungs and in their hearts, and I'm hanging on to that." And the human answered by saying, "Oh my goodness, I guess we didn't think of it that way." She had had some sight issues, and her husband had lost a brother recently. And what was amazing after that was, once she acknowledged that and we talked through it a little bit, this dog started coughing, because I said, "Oh my goodness, she's got all this stuff around her. I'm really concerned about her heart and her lungs. There's so much stuff. Is what's going on?" And so that's when she started, or that's when the dog communicated, and that's when we started to talk a little bit about it. And then, just as she explained what was happening and kind of started releasing it, her dog started coughing and coughing and coughing. We couldn't speak for, I would say, 2 to 3 minutes. And she said, "Oh my goodness, it's like she has kennel cough. She had kennel cough years and years ago." And then I could feel the whole energy clear. And it was just because her human acknowledged and kind of and started letting some of that go, then the dog could release it and let it go. And I thought that was incredible.
Yes, yes. Oh, that is. Yes, they do so much for us animals. So they're so generous. And,
Yeah,
um,
they teach us about generosity, don't they? And
yes.
they love gratitude. They love it when we tell them that, when we acknowledge how grateful we are. We acknowledge who they are and what they're doing for us.
Yeah, yeah. Is there a way there, because they absorb our fears, they might even actually carry the illness that we sort of suffer from. Is there a way that we can protect that from happening so that they don't suffer, so they don't absorb, well, our illnesses or our issues and fears and anxieties? Um,
That's a wonderful thing to bring up. And I have people ask me that a lot because we'll make that connection and they say, well, can you tell them to stop? I know through the years that that doesn't work because they're super absorbers and that's why they're here. So really the main way that we can help them is by working on our own, our own stuff inside, our own fears, our own acknowledging our own needs, acknowledging our own feelings, because so often our physical illnesses and physical ailments are tied to that. And so the animals know this and they automatically absorb it and try to show us, try to heal it, and then they try to show us if we're not getting it. So there's really not a way to protect, but except for help allowing ourselves to really start to acknowledge what's going on and be more aware. And they will love that because then you're working as a team and you're in tandem together. And they're showing you and you're getting it and it can't make them more happy. That is the thing that makes them the most happy.
yes, yes. And so you also communicate with animals who've crossed over.
Mhm.
Um, this is something I assume, but you know better because you communicate with them. I assume that my Lily, who's crossed over, that she's still with me. Well, just before we recorded this video, you spoke to her. She's still with me all the time. So, do our animals who've crossed over, are they still there? Are they still hovering over us? Do they still have messages for us? Are they still guiding us and helping us?
Yes, they are. And, while they don't love leaving us, but they accept it and they understand the bigger picture, as I was saying earlier, that if they leave, then they can come back and serve us in a much better way. And so, yes, they are around you no matter what. I promise. They always are. And so if you see them out of the corner of your eye, that can happen. If you feel them energetically in your lap, maybe licking you, or just know that they're there, they are. Trust that. They want to make it known. They desperately want to make it known, and they will go to great measures to try to help you see that they're there. And oftentimes, what happens is they will work through another animal. If we've got another animal in the house, oftentimes they work together as a tag team, and so one will leave and the other will take on some duties that they've agreed to ahead of time. And it's fascinating to watch because suddenly the personality becomes just a little bit different. Like, oh, my dog never used to do that. And now they want to play more with me with the ball, like Fido did or whoever it was. And so they can do that. But yeah, and then they want to come back. Most of them, they want to come back, especially if you have that bonded connection. They'll come back and continue that to help us, to be that support, to be that angel support in the flesh, in the body.
Yeah, yeah. And as I sort of brought up earlier, so Dr. Robert Schwartz, who's the author of Your Soul's Gift, a past life regression therapist, he says that sometimes a loved one or even a spirit guide will reincarnate in as a pet in our lives, so as to spend a lifetime with us. How do you feel about that? I want to mention here, at the risk of sounding a bit like Phoebe in the series Friends, I sometimes I would look at my Lily and so my father, he passed away in 2010, and sometimes I would look at my Lily and gosh, like I wonder if my father is in you. There's just it's something about the eyes, or maybe not. Maybe they're two different souls. Is that possible? Does such a thing happen, or walk in maybe?
Yeah, I don't find that to be very common that they'll switch from being a human to a pet or a pet to a human. It certainly can happen, and walk-ins can happen from time to time. For the most part, what I find in a situation like what you're talking about with your Lily and your dad is that your dad is working through Lily to reach you and to support you. And so just know that whenever she was giving you love or whenever you felt her eyes, your dad was trying to bring his energy through her and really trying to give you messages of love and comfort through her. And so they all work together. And it's really, they can be when they can be a part of our team. And so when they're here, not only when they're here, but when they've passed, our pets. And so they can be part of our divine team, and they can get messages from the team, and the team can say, hey, we need you to do this, or those sorts of things can happen. So they work so closely. And Lily is good friends with your dad, so they
Yeah.
work together.
Yes.
Now they work together.
No, because sometimes she would look at me and it was almost as if my father was looking at me, just that same energy.
Bringing energy.
Yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. And so you just touched upon it. Is there a difference between animal souls and human souls? Mm,
Yeah, animals have the soul of an angel. It's
mm,
how they love us unconditionally. It's how they can keep loving us after we've had a bad day and we're short with them, or we've gotten upset with them. They don't like that, but they understand, and they can come back and love us no matter what. And it's how they can accept us for who we are. It's how they can accept us for even if we're not listening to their messages. Because I've certainly talked to a lot of pets like that. They're frustrated, but they love their human. It doesn't matter. So there's so much like angels in that way, and in the way that they absorb, and the way that they lift up the energy, and the way that they give wisdom. They hold that vibration of love on our planet, and that goes for animals in the wild too.
mm,
It goes for trees and plants, and they're all kind of mixed together and doing similar work.
mm. Yes. I mean, they already embody unconditional love for animals, so in that sense, they're perhaps a little bit closer to God in a way, or the divine creator, because us humans, we don't embody unconditional love yet. It's they help us evolve, I suppose.
Yeah, they help. They are our teachers, and they emulate, what unconditional love is. They help us to feel it, because sometimes we'd never feel that from another human being ever. And so their love can show us what that feels like, and really help us to feel more safe and secure and understood. I mean, that's what animals always did for me, especially when I was young. I felt understood in a way that I just didn't from the other humans around me. So yeah, they really embody. They are amazing sacred beings. We are too, but we've come in for other lessons. We've
Yeah.
come in to evolve and to learn things. And the animals are really here to help support that, support our evolution, to help us see, oh, I didn't quite get that before, but now I start to see it, either through their behavior or through an illness or just from a message that they love to give us. So I don't, we're all connected. It's just that they don't lose their connection. They don't have an ego. So they don't lose that connection. They are always connected. So that's how, when some animals are treated really inhumanely, while they get fear and they lose trust, they can always be brought back. They can always come back to a place of trust so much easier than human beings. And that's why, because they've always stayed connected.
So I wanted to ask you about stray dogs, essentially. So in this part of the world where I live in Western Europe, there aren't many stray dogs, but in my country of origin, in Turkey, there are. And some people who are not so sensitive to animals tend to complain about these stray dogs. And so the impression I always have is that if an animal is aggressive, it's because they're in fear. But is there more to it than that, especially with stray animals, or also with our domestic sort of animal friends?
There is a little more, yeah, to be seen behind the scenes. That's very observant of you, Aslam. Yes. So if you have an area where there's a lot of stray dogs or a lot of stray cats, it's trying to show the human beings, maybe not all of them, but some of them at least, in the area that they need to come home to their heart. They need to come home to their feelings. It's a symbol, it's symbolism, it's a metaphor. And so those dogs have agreed to take on that role of being homeless or stray, and in fear, to mirror that back. It's sort of what we talked about before. They're the absorbers, and all plays out in the story. So to answer your question as well about if they're in fear, they are, but they're mirroring it back. So again, they're absorbing the energy that's in that area and they're mirroring it back to the humans, trying to show them your heart doesn't feel safe, your heart doesn't feel secure, your heart needs to be acknowledged.
Mm. Mm.
Makes sense. So, and yes, even our domestic pets can be fearful, and oftentimes that's a mirror as well, where or they've just come in to teach us about having more patience, or something we need to learn about observing, using our intuition better. Um, because sometimes those dogs in a domestic situation can get afraid if they're out at a park and there's other dogs around, whatever it might be. We need to sometimes be better at using our intuition and knowing what our dog can handle and what they can't. And we're just moving away from situations where it's a little too stressful, it's a little too much. I mean, animals are sensitive too, and they have ranges of sensitivity just like human beings do. So some animals are more sensitive and they get overwhelmed more easily, or they never pick a fight. It's never like what we think. They're not like human beings that, my dog hates that dog. They don't really feel that way. That's not what's going on. It's all a story playing out for us to see about, maybe there's some energy going on between you and the neighbor or something that's subconscious. Maybe you feel inferior, or you're upset because your neighbor is taking advantage of you, asking you lots of favors, or so. This is silly example, but I think it'll get it across. And so you have a little resentment, but you're not aware of it, you're not acknowledging it. And your dog one day goes over to the yard and kind of, does a little nip or something and gets a little annoyed. Well, see how that plays out. It can play out that way. So it has so much to do with our energy, so much to do with what's happening with us inside.
Yes. And so let's say I want to adopt an animal. At this point, I think I still would feel as if I betrayed my Lily, really. But how do we know that, let's say we walk into a shelter, how do we know that really that animal is our animal? Sometimes I suppose we just know, but is there really sort of a clear sign or a method or an approach to it?
You can there Yeah, I love that question, actually. It's There's a few ways we can do that. So if we're really wanting, let's say, a dog, and we know what kind of dog we want, and let's say we live in an apartment or something, and we need a dog that is going to be okay in an apartment, and we love to take walks. So let's say we want to be able to take walks with this dog. Maybe we have an idea of what kind of breed, maybe we really don't. We just know that we want this kind of a dog with these traits. Well, we can be prescriptive, and we can ask our team of helpers, we can ask spirit for what we want. And I've seen it happen so many times. And then we feel guided. Somehow we see, we see something online, we see an animal online, and we're just guided to go and look at the computer one day, right? And we see if Pet Finders is here in the US, .com. You can go on that, and oh my goodness, this dog, you see this dog and you're like, woo, you can feel it in your being. And so then you go see and you meet this dog and you feel and you try to feel. Now, I used to tell people it's the eyes and just what kind of connection are you making a connection? And my pets have taught me that that's not always how it works. I have a dog named Holly. Actually, she's in the photograph behind me. And I did happen to get her on Pet Finders. There's a whole story behind that. And she is one of my dogs incarnated, one of my past dogs. But um, I went on Pet Finders. I found her. I cried when I
Oh.
saw the picture. It was pretty obvious. I went to go meet her at the foster place, and all she did was run around. She and I was like, then I started questioning. Well, wait, now this I don't know. And she was my, I would ask, and yes, she's your dog, she's your dog. Well, that was a lesson for me to learn. It isn't always about that. Oh, our eyes met and it was magic, but it's the feeling that you have inside. Just trust it. You're guided to go to the computer. If somebody tells you about a litter that's being born, listen, see if that's maybe the dog for you. There's all different ways to do it. If you walk into a shelter and you feel compelled, you feel just so drawn to a particular cat that's in the shelter, and it just feels like home to you. I think that's the best way I can describe it. um, Most likely it's your pet. And sometimes our animals, when they leave and exit and go to heaven, they need a little bit more of a break than what we maybe our egos would like. Sometimes maybe they're waiting to come back. Maybe it's even 4 years, 5 years, maybe it's longer. Sometimes they'll come back right away. Sometimes they won't for whatever reason. But sometimes they can be orchestrating for you to get this other animal in the meantime. And so people often say, "Oh, I can't possibly. I feel so bad. I feel guilty." Chances are your animal is helping orchestrate bringing in this new animal into your life to help you, and it's the perfect pet that you need right now.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yes.
Amazing.
Yes, yes, yes. There are little orchestrators up there. Yes. Um, so finally, I remain with two questions. One is, I mean, does the pet population or do the animals in the world, do they have a message for us today? I mean, you being a channel for them, you voicing their concerns and thoughts and feelings.
Yeah, let me just listen here and see.
Yeah.
Animals on our planet just want us to be aware, much more aware of who they are, how much they love us, how much they support us. And they want you to understand that it's about love, and they're teaching us how to love ourselves, how to accept ourselves. The animals understand that that often is a doorway. Loving an animal or connecting with an animal is a doorway into a human being being able to love themselves, accept themselves, honor themselves, and acknowledge what needs to be acknowledged, and to let old pain and hurt and suffering go. They really encourage us to live in our hearts, just as the animals do, to allow our hearts and our souls to lead us in decisions, to lead us to love, to lead us in careers and jobs and relationships, straight from our heart, so that we can really honor what our heart wants. And the animals are here to support us.
Oh, beautiful. Interesting that they can even show us actually where we are unhappy in our lives and mirror that back to us and prompt us to make changes. It's
Yeah. And they know when we're serious about wanting to change or not too, because I've experienced that before where cat will say, my human's not listening in a session. I've relayed the message and they say, my human hasn't heard it. They aren't really taking it in. So they can tell when we're being truthful and what we're really thinking
yeah,
and inside. So yeah, they're incredible, really.
yeah, yes. So finally, how can people work with you? You offer animal communication sessions, but you also coach people in animal communication. You offer courses. You're also author of a book on animal communication, and you're a pet photographer. So many, many reasons for which people might want to get in touch with you.
Yeah, my website is probably the best site. So it's kathyvangilder.com, and you'll find everything there.
All right, yes. Thank you very much, Kathy, for having devoted your life force energy to this podcast. On behalf of not just myself, but also my Lily, thank you very much.
You're so welcome, and thank you so much for allowing the animals' voices to be heard today.